The air in the waiting room at King's Cross Medical Center was heavy, filled with antiseptic and dread. I sat beside my husband, Elliot, whose pale complexion had worsened over the past few weeks. He looked down at his hands, fiddling nervously. I had pushed him to come in for a checkup after he kept brushing off his constant fatigue. He had always been the kind to ignore symptoms, insisting he was simply overworked. When the doctor finally returned with the test results, he wore the kind of grim expression that silenced a room. "Early-stage liver cancer," he said to Elliot, gently but firmly. "We've caught it in time. Treatment is possible, but it will be costly." Elliot sat in stunned silence. I reached for his hand instinctively, already calculating how we could afford the treatment. There was one person I could ask, my mother. That evening, I rang her from our small terrace flat in Camden. She picked up on the first ring. "Mum, we need help. Elliot's sick. We need at least £80,000 for treatment. Can you lend us anything?" There was a pause on the line before she replied, "Of course, darling. Leave it with me." I sighed with relief, but what I didn't know then was that my mother had already decided to take matters into her own hands. Later that night, while I was making tea in the kitchen, my phone buzzed. A message from Elliot. "Let's get a divorce." I dropped the mug. The shatter echoed through the flat. My chest tightened. I ran to the bedroom where Elliot was packing a small suitcase. "What is this?" I demanded. He didn't meet my eyes. "You lied to me," he said flatly. "Your mother told me you have cancer. And you didn't even think to tell me." Everything in me twisted. I understood then. My mother had told him I was the one who was sick. She never trusted Elliot to stay by my side if things got hard. She had tested him. "You were supposed to stand by me," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He shrugged as if this was some petty misunderstanding. "Why should I?" he said. "I'm still young. I can't spend my life looking after someone who's going to die." The cruelty stunned me. It wasn't just cowardice. It was calculation. The next morning, his mother, Maureen, was already waiting for me when I returned from a walk. She stood in our doorway with her arms crossed, Elliot's father, Henry, behind her. "You've brought this on yourself," Maureen snapped as she pushed past me into the flat. "We need to talk. It's time you signed the papers." In the dining room, Henry added gruffly. I walked into the room to find the whole family seated as if this were some formal gathering. A pile of papers was already waiting at the table. "Let's not waste time," Maureen said. "We've decided. It's best for everyone." I stared at Elliot, searching for any trace of the man I once knew. But he looked at me with the same empty coldness I'd seen the night before. My heart sank, and for the first time, I realized I wasn't losing a marriage. I was shedding a lie. Then Maureen added, "If you don't want a divorce, we can take you to a spiritual healer in Brighton. It's cheaper. No hospital bills." I froze. They thought I was dying, and instead of fighting to save me, they wanted the cheapest way out. They would rather I swallow herbs and pretend it was medicine. Elliot looked at me, his voice irritatingly soft. "You've got options. But let's not drag everyone into debt. You should think about others for once." "Others?" I snapped. "I was the one who caught your cancer in time. I'm the one who begged for help. And when you thought I was dying, your first move was to leave." He didn't respond. I turned to his mother. "You want me to die quietly. You want my assets. You want to wipe your hands of guilt." They didn't deny it. And just then, Henry handed me a folder, cold, legal, binding. A treatment agreement with 3 brutal clauses. I opened it slowly, my hands trembling. Clause 1. I may only use treatments covered by public insurance. Clause 2. Elliot's family may halt treatment at any point. Clause 3. If I borrow money in secret, Elliot may file for divorce, take all shared assets, and leave me with the debt. I stared at them in horror. Their plan wasn't to help me. It was to bleed me dry. And Elliot? He just stood there and said, if I were you, I'd take sleeping pills and die quietly. He believed that made him honorable. I realized then, I wasn't the sick one. He was. The cancer had never been mine. It was his. But I couldn't tell him. Not yet. The storm outside mirrored the one brewing within the flat. Rain pelted the windows as I sat motionless, the agreement still clutched in my hands. The air in the dining room was thick with silence, broken only by the occasional sigh or impatient throat clear from Maureen. Elliot stood near the fireplace, arms crossed, gazing at me like I was a worn-out burden. Sign it, he said coldly. You know it's the sensible thing to do. I looked at the pages again, as if reading them a second time might change what they said. But the words hadn't shifted. They still screamed betrayal, selfishness, and greed. This wasn't love. This wasn't even decency. Maureen leaned forward. You need to understand, dear, this isn't personal. We're trying to protect Elliot's future. If you really loved him, you'd let him go. Let him go. I whispered, my voice shaking. He has cancer. He's the one who needs support. And you're talking about his future. They stared at me, blank-faced. And that's when it dawned on me, they didn't know. My mother had told them I was the one with the diagnosis. They still believed Elliot was healthy, and I was terminal. I could feel my chest rising and falling in sharp, shallow breaths. I had a choice to make. Tell them the truth, and risk everything. Or let the lie live a little longer, and watch them reveal who they truly were. I'm not signing anything, I said finally. If Elliot wants to leave, he can. But I won't be bound by something so twisted. Maureen's nostrils flared. You'll regret this, she snapped. Don't expect a penny from us. And don't come crawling back when you're dying in an NHS ward. Henry, who had been mostly silent, added with a sneer, that ward will be your coffin. Not our problem. Elliot said nothing. He just turned and walked out. And like that, he was gone. The next morning, I received an email from my bank. Suspicious withdrawals. My savings account had been drained, over £25,000 missing. I rang the bank in a panic, heart thudding. It was authorized by your husband, the woman on the line explained calmly. Joint account holder. We have his signature and ID confirmation. I dropped the phone. He had taken the money and vanished. I rushed home to call Mum. I needed answers. She picked up after the second ring. Mum, I cried, did you tell Elliot I was the one who was sick? There was silence on the line. Then she said quietly, yes. Why? My voice cracked. Because I needed to see if he would stay, she said. I didn't trust him. And I was right. My knees buckled, and I sat down hard on the floor. He's taken everything. He left me with nothing. No, darling, she said firmly. He left you with everything. Now you know. In the days that followed, the truth unraveled like a frayed jumper. Elliot had packed up and moved to Scotland, to his family's cottage in Inverness. He had left a trail of silence behind him, no apology, no explanation, no contact. But his health would catch up to him soon. And I was the only one who knew it. I kept the secret close. If he wanted to believe he was fine, let him. Let him run. Let him squander stolen money. Because when the pain came, when the cancer caught up, he'd have no one left. He had chosen this. And while I was left with nothing but an empty flat and an aching heart, I still had something he never would. Dignity. The days that followed blurred into one another. London moved on as if nothing had happened, but I was frozen in a strange kind of silence, like my soul had been wrapped in gauze. The flat felt too quiet. The air too still. I avoided the bedroom entirely. His scent still clung to the pillows like a ghost I hadn't yet buried. Mum came by often. She brought bags of groceries, folded my laundry, and left little notes tucked between books and cabinets. Eat something. You're stronger than you think. Breathe. They helped more than she realized. One Thursday morning, I dragged myself to the oncology clinic for a follow-up. The receptionist greeted me with a kind smile, but I could feel the pity behind her eyes. Everyone looked at me that way now, as if I were a walking expiry date. But the results were clear. The tumor had not spread. In fact, it had shrunk. The new specialist, Dr. Tamsin Rowley, explained it without fanfare. It's responding unusually well to treatment. Your immune system is doing much of the work. We'll continue observing, but I'm hopeful. Hopeful. It was the first time in weeks that word didn't feel cruel. I walked out of the clinic and stood on the pavement for a while, letting the noise of London wash over me. The world hadn't ended. Not yet. That evening, I sat down and opened the laptop for the first time since Elliot left. I clicked on the old email thread between us. His last message was still there, unread, its subject line cold and final, "You'll be fine without me." I hovered over the trash icon, then stopped. Instead, I hit reply. You lied. You ran. And one day, it'll catch up to you. I might be the one they called sick, but I'm the one still standing. Good luck. You'll need it. I hit send. Then I blocked his email. 2 days later, a letter arrived. Handwritten. No envelope. Just tucked into the doorframe of the flat like an apology trying not to be found. It read. You lied to me first. I loved you. But I can't forgive what your mother did. And I can't forgive you for not telling me. E. I stared at the note for a long time. Part of me wanted to tear it up, burn it, destroy every trace of him. But instead, I folded it carefully and placed it in the back of a drawer. Because hatred was heavy. And I was done carrying what wasn't mine. I began walking again in the evenings. Around Clissold Park, coat zipped up, scarf wrapped tight. I listened to the birds nesting in the trees and the sound of children's laughter from far-off flats. London had a way of surviving heartbreak. It kept going. So would I. And then, one night, I saw him. Across the street. Leaning against the corner shop near my flat, as if he hadn't vanished with my trust and money. Elliot. Thinner now. Gaunt. Pale. He didn't look like someone who had won anything. He spotted me. But he didn't wave. He just stood there. Watching. And then, slowly, he turned and walked away. I didn't follow. Spring arrived in Stoke Newington slowly, brushing the trees with hints of green and coaxing reluctant flowers from the ground. But inside the house, shadows still lingered. Mum stayed longer each time she visited. She brought seed packets and new gloves and claimed the little patch of garden behind the flat as a project to keep her hands busy. I knew it was her way of watching over me without saying it aloud. One Sunday, as we pulled weeds beneath a grey sky, she asked, "Do you remember your father's garden in Surrey?" I paused, fingers buried in damp soil. Barely. He died when I was 10. Her eyes met mine, as if measuring how much truth I was ready for. "There's something I've never told you," she said quietly. "About him. And me." The world seemed to tilt. She wiped her hands, smearing soil across her jeans, and looked down at the earth. "Your father had another family. A wife. Children. I didn't know until after you were born." My breath caught. What? I was young. Naive. I thought I was the only one. When I found out, I nearly left with you. But he died before I could. I didn't know what to say. The dirt in my palms felt suddenly heavy, gritty, like betrayal made tangible. I stayed silent to protect you, she whispered. And maybe to protect myself. I stood and stepped back, the spade slipping from my fingers. So we were the secret, I said. I didn't want you to grow up thinking love was a lie. But it was. Wasn't it? Later that evening, I sat alone on the back steps, watching the garden she'd started. Seedlings trembled in the breeze. They didn't know yet whether to live or die. Everything felt like that now, paused in the unknown. Then the post arrived. A single envelope. No return address. Inside was a solicitor's letter. Elliot had declared bankruptcy. Everything he owned, what little was left, was being seized to repay debts. He had gambled far more than I'd ever known. And he'd used my name on at least one of the accounts. Fraud. The word felt like a noose. I called the solicitor. They said my name was tied to a shared business venture, an investment Elliot had made 6 months before disappearing. My forged signature was on the form. I could hear the blood in my ears. I wasn't just abandoned. I was implicated. Mum stood in the doorway, watching me as I sat trembling with the letter in my lap. She didn't speak. Just stepped forward and placed a steaming mug of tea beside me. I'll fix this, I said, more to myself than to her. She nodded. But that night, as I lay in bed, I knew something had broken loose in me. The girl I'd been, the one who waited by the window, who wrote diary entries like prayers, was gone. In her place stood someone colder. Clearer. And no longer afraid of secrets. The following morning, a chill drifted through the corridors of number 17 Elmcroft Lane, even though the day was unusually warm. I had hardly slept, and when I did, my dreams were filled with faceless men and closed courtroom doors. By the time I stepped into the hallway, Mum had gone. A note rested on the kitchen counter. You're stronger than you know. I'm always near. Mum. The note felt more like a farewell than reassurance. I busied myself cleaning the flat, desperate to feel in control of something. But as I was scrubbing the tiles near the front door, I noticed something odd. The skirting board just beneath the staircase had a jagged crack. Not just a crack, but a line where paint peeled away as though it had been tampered with. I ran my fingers along the edge. It gave way. Inside was a narrow gap. A cavity. Curiosity overpowered caution. I fetched a screwdriver and widened the opening until I could reach in. My hand brushed something cool and plastic. A recorder. I stared at it for several seconds, heart pounding. An old voice recorder, caked in dust, tucked away in the very bones of this house. I pressed play. Static. Then a voice, muffled, distant, unmistakably Elliot's. If she finds out about the second account, I'll lose everything. But she won't. She trusts me. She always has. My blood ran cold. Another voice followed. Male. Older. Calm. You'll have to make sure she stays quiet, Elliot. You've come too far. Silence. Then laughter. The recording ended. I dropped the device like it had burned me. Who was the second voice? Suddenly, I saw the house differently, not as a home, but as a container. Of secrets. Of schemes. Of danger. Had Elliot left this behind by mistake, or was it meant to be found? A car engine roared outside. I glanced through the window. A sleek, dark car idled across the road. Not a neighbor's. Not familiar. The driver never got out. Just waited. Watching. I stepped back from the curtain. The phone rang. My stomach twisted. I picked it up. Silence. Then, "It's best if you stop digging, Miss Beaumont." Click. The line went dead. I dropped the phone. And in that instant, I realized I hadn't been left behind. I was still in the middle of it. And someone wanted me to disappear just as quietly as he had. That evening, I locked every door and window. Even the old bathroom latch, which never quite fit, was bolted shut with the handle of a broom wedged underneath. Something in the air had shifted. Every creak of the house felt deliberate, like the walls were listening. I curled up on the armchair with the voice recorder in my lap, turning it over and over. What other secrets had this house swallowed? My thoughts were interrupted by the doorbell. I didn't move. It rang again. Slowly, I stepped forward and peered through the peephole. No one. But as I opened the door, ever so slightly, I found a plain envelope on the doorstep. No name. Just a wax seal. Red. Familiar. I took it inside with trembling hands and broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of thick, cream-colored paper. "He lied to everyone, including you. Meet me tomorrow at Grayson Park, 3 p.m., by the War Memorial. Come alone." No name. No signature. Just a challenge. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, the paranoia had grown claws. Was this a trap? Was someone trying to scare me off, or guide me toward the truth? Grayson Park was usually quiet on weekdays. I arrived early and waited by the War Memorial, heart galloping in my chest like it wanted to escape. At exactly 3, a woman approached. She looked to be in her 50s, sharp grey eyes, a long trench coat wrapped tight even though it was warm. She didn't smile. "Clara Beaumont." I nodded. "I knew your father," she said. My mouth went dry. "You've made a mistake." She pulled out a photograph. A black and white image, creased and stained. Elliot. Much younger. Standing beside her. I worked for him. And I saw what he did. What he became. I swallowed hard. She continued, "The account, the stolen funds, the false contracts, he used you to keep his hands clean. But when things got messy, he needed a scapegoat." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," she said, "he's still alive. And he's been watching you." My knees nearly buckled. "Alive?" I whispered. "But he staged it. The crash. The disappearance. It was all to start fresh. To vanish. But he underestimated how stubborn you are." I stared at her, my skin crawling. "Why help me?" She hesitated. "Because once I was like you. I believed in him." She pressed a small metal key into my palm. "A safety deposit box at Holloway Bank. Number 312. Everything you need is there." She turned and walked away, leaving me rooted to the spot. As the chill wind swept through the trees, I knew I had crossed a line. There would be no turning back now. Holloway Bank stood at the corner of a cobbled street, its facade aged with soot and ivy. Inside, the air smelt of waxed wood and quiet tension. A marble counter, brass lamps, and silent glances from staff gave the place an atmosphere of something long buried and carefully preserved. I stepped up to the desk, clutching the key in my pocket so tightly it left an imprint in my palm. "Box 312, please," I whispered to the clerk. He didn't flinch. Just nodded once and led me through a secure door, down a narrow corridor lined with tiny vaults. When he left me alone, the silence was heavy. I inserted the key. It clicked open. Inside, stacked neatly, were 4 leather-bound ledgers, a brown manila envelope, and a mobile phone, an old one, the kind no one used anymore. My hands shook as I picked them up. The ledgers were filled with neat handwriting. Elliot's. Columns of names, dates, accounts, coded symbols. Every single transaction from the trust fund. The lies. The money siphoned off over the years. The envelope held a USB stick and a typed letter. No greeting. Just one sentence at the top. In case they come for you too. I pocketed it quickly. The phone turned on with a flickering screen, and a single voicemail notification popped up. I hesitated. Then pressed play. Elliot's voice. Clara. If you're listening to this, then either I've failed or you've dug too deep. Either way, the truth is already dangerous. I never meant for you to be caught in this. But if you are, go to the garden shed. Behind the old rose trellis. There's more you need to see. The shed. I left the bank in a daze, the wind stinging my cheeks. Questions buzzed louder than ever. Was this really my father's way of making peace, or simply the next breadcrumb in his cruel game? Back home, I stood before the shed, the old trellis barely holding up the overgrowth of roses. My hands trembled as I pulled it aside. Behind it, just like he said, was a rusted panel. And behind that, a hidden compartment, nailed shut. I pried it open. Inside, a locked metal box. No key. But taped to the side was a note. Only those who know the truth of the 18th of August will understand. My breath caught. That date. The day he vanished. The day the trust imploded. The day I found out I had been blamed for it all. The day my life shattered. What was in this final box? And why was he still playing games with me from the shadows? My fingers brushed the cold metal, and deep in my chest, something cracked open. The truth wasn't done with me yet. Rain had begun to fall, soft at first, then harder, drumming against the shed's tin roof as if echoing my heartbeat. I held the locked metal box in my lap, the inscription still staring back at me. Only those who know the truth of the 18th of August will understand. That date had haunted me for years. It was the day of the trust's collapse. The day the media turned against me. The day I last saw my father. And the day the garden went silent. I carried the box into the house, soaked and breathless. My mind raced as I rummaged through drawers, memory boxes, old tins, anywhere he might have hidden a key. Hours passed. Nothing. Then I remembered the attic. I hadn't been up there in years. The dust was thick, the air dry and cold. I found my father's old safe beneath a moth-eaten tarpaulin. It took 3 failed guesses and 1 trembling hand to type in 1808. The door creaked open. Inside was nothing but a velvet pouch. And in that pouch was the key. I ran down the stairs, breath hitching in my chest, and slid it into the metal box. Click. The lid opened with a hiss of stale air. Inside was a stack of photographs, a birth certificate, and a second letter. My fingers trembled as I pulled it all out. The photographs, they showed my father, a woman I didn't recognize, and a child, me. But the woman, she wasn't my mother. Not the woman I'd known all my life. The certificate confirmed it. Mother, Alexandra Hale. Not Joanna Morley. I stumbled back. Who was she? What had my father done? The letter was written in my father's hand, but this time, it bore something deeper than guilt. It bore desperation. Clara, I could never tell you the truth. Not when so many were watching. Not when their hands were still in our lives. Your real mother, she died for asking questions. And I lied to keep you safe. The trust fund wasn't just about money. It was blood money. Hushed scandals. Legacies they wanted erased. You were never supposed to find this. My ears rang. The truth had always been close, hidden in the gaps between their lies. All the accusations. The betrayal. The isolation. It had been designed to protect someone else's name. Not mine. And now I knew. The final puzzle fell into place, not as relief, but as rage. The men in power had tried to bury it all. Including me. I looked up at the grey sky beyond the window, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt ready. Ready to drag every secret into the daylight.